We can still do the presentations, okay?
Sure.
I've started the recording, Ms. Wilson.
Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Raymond, I'm going to have you do roll call and then read the language that we need to read for this meeting.
Sure. Let's do a roll call. It's 9:06 a.m. on October 14th, 2020. Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Michael Norwich. Robert, can you get with Michael? I know he's trying to get in. Can you maybe give him a call and see if we can work that one out?
Yes, sir.
Luis Rosas.
Here.
Patrick Byrne.
Here.
Nicholas Lamantia.
Here.
Marco Zaragoza. Okay, Robert, I'll ask you to check with him. With that, let me read the COVID notices into the record. Pursuant to the suspension of certain open meetings laws by Governor Greg Abbott, this CRRMA board meeting is being held by video and telephone conference. In accordance with the various federal, state, and local orders, the public may participate in the meeting using the video link or telephone conference information found on the CRRMA's website and on the posted agenda. This meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the CRRMA's website as soon as possible after conclusion of the meeting. During the meeting, each board member making a motion or a second should state who made each. The chair will then call for those in favor, against, or abstaining. The public is invited to participate in the meeting just as with all CRRMA board meetings. If you are interested in asking a question or providing a comment, please submit a comment in the chat function of the video component or ask to be recognized by phone. If there are no questions from the board, we are ready to begin with the chair reading item 2 into the record.
All right, thank you. So item 2 is adoption of the minutes from the CRRMA board meeting of September 9th, 2020. Has everyone had a chance to review them? If there's no amendments, I'll entertain a motion and second to approve.
Move to approve. This Jim.
I have a motion.
Luis Rosas, second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3, discussion and action on CRRMA priorities for the 87th Texas legislative session. Raymond?
Thank you. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. Today we have before us as item number 3, the proposed CRRMA priorities for the 87th Texas legislative session. I will mention that these items went before the Planning Committee last week and were approved and recommended for the full board's approval. So I'll go through them very briefly. There are 4 items that we're looking at identifying as priorities for this next session. The first one is to preserve existing financing tools. So this relates back to the propositions 1 and 7 that were passed by the voters in 2014 and 15 respectively. The idea here really is simply to protect what we already have. These are financing tools, especially Props 1 and 7 that were approved recently to protect the funding sources for transportation initiatives. So the idea here is if there is legislation that is supportive of protecting those and other financing tools that are available, we would be supportive of that. Item 2 then relates to the Weiler Aerial Tramway. Obviously, we are seeking funding for that. We're big supporters of that project. As you may recall, in the last legislative session, there was $5 million that were allocated for the solution, whatever that may be, in terms of bringing Weiler back online. So we're looking at supporting any legislation or any actions or initiatives that are intended to bring Weiler back, including additional funding from the this next legislative session. That's number 2. Number 3 then is optional vehicle registration fee and other local funding options, including TRZs. What we're talking about here is the idea that and I'll give you an example, there is one county, I believe it's Cameron County down in South Texas, that has the ability not only to impose the original $10 optional vehicle registration fee, just as we have here in El Paso County, but they have the ability to increase that to, I believe, another $10 on top of that, yet they are the only county in the state that's authorized to do that. So we would be supportive, if El Paso County is interested in this, we would be supportive of legislation that would allow El Paso County to increase that. I will mention there are all sorts of different ways to implement that. I know that Cameron County has the provision that requires a vote to actually have that happen. So anyhow, we would be supportive of an increase in that vehicle registration fee amount because of how successful the VRF program is here. On top of that, we're also supportive of anything that that would increase local funding options, including, by way of example, there was an issue with transportation reinvestment zones and their implementation by counties in the state. We would be supportive of a legislative fix to that as well. And then lastly, public-private partnership authority. This one is an interesting one in that in order to enter into a PPP or public-private partnership for transportation, you are required to include your proposed project in specific legislation that would then authorize the use of a PPP. Those PPPs, while we don't necessarily have one identified for our region, they are important for the state because if a project that is currently planned to use public funds could then flip and use PPP funds, that would actually increase the amounts of funding available for the rest of the state. So that would, of course, benefit our region. So, or potentially could benefit our region and others. So we are supportive of PPP authority expanding that ability. So those are the 4 items that we ran through the planning committee, and as I mentioned, they were supportive of forwarding this resolution in support of those priorities. I'll mention also, we've provided these priorities to Representative Ortega and also Representative Blanco's offices and received no objection back. In fact, some support for some of the items that we are discussing here. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
This is
Are there any
Jim.
questions?
Yeah, this is Jim. I also just confirming here that all of these are in sync with all of the other priorities within our region here, the MPO, the Mobility Coalition, the city, all of those things. Are there any conflicts to those that you know of in those other entities?
No, sir. Not aware of any conflicts between this and anything else that any of our other partners are involved in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear because that's really important with the efforts being made by the MPO to get us going forward with a unified voice.
Yes, sir. In fact, that's partly the reason why we shared it with Representatives Ortega and Blanco, to make sure that we were not pursuing something or in support of something that was actually counter to one of their initiatives. So we believe that we are in line with everyone else.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can I get a motion?
This Jim, I move to approve.
Can I get a second?
This is Luis, second.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
The motion passes. Item 4 is discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to advertise a construction letting for the Fabens Airport Deceleration Lane project.
Okay, for this one, I've got a very brief PowerPoint, and I'll run through it pretty quickly. This was provided as backup to the board as well. This deals with Fabens Airport, the deceleration lane. As you may recall, we are supporting the County of El Paso's efforts to improve their airport. Among the things that we are doing includes this decel lane, which is along Fabens Road, as well as designing some hangars and some other improvements within the airport as well. So we have completed the design or are very near to completion of the design. This is the project location. Up in this area here is the I-10 Fabens Road interchange. And when you come down Fabens Road, this is essentially what we're doing. We're adding a deceleration lane heading southbound into the airport, and northbound where we have a turn lane included as well. Very straightforward project. The design, as I mentioned, is either complete or very, very near completion. These are some of the details in terms of what we will be providing as part of the scope. The role of the county, of course, is to provide the construction funding and decisions and guidance as the owner. And we will prepare and let the construction bids, the project for bids, and we would do the construction management services as well. Here's what we're looking at for a timeline. We would probably advertise in late this month, late October. Then we have a second advertisement requirement. By mid-December, we would open the bids. By mid-January, we believe that we'd be able to execute the construction agreement and begin work. These are, of course, preliminary schedules and are subject to change. We think it'll take about 3 months to complete, so we'd be done by the summer 2021. Again, subject to change. These are it's a really straightforward project, so we think we can pull that off. So subject to your questions, then I would recommend approval of this board resolution, which would authorize me to begin advertising for the construction letting.
Are there any comments or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
I'll
Can I get
second.
it?
This is Mike Norwich.
Okay, Mike, good. I'm glad to see that you're on. Thank you. So I have
Yeah.
a motion and
Yeah,
second.
I've been on.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 5 is discussion and action on board resolution to authorize the executive director to execute the following amendments as they relate to the State Loop 375 Main Lanes Widening and Frontage Road Ramp Project. A is amendment number 4 to work authorization 3 with Dannenbaum Engineering for design services. B is amendment number 6 to work authorization number 2 with AECOM for design services during construction, the frontage road ramps. C is amendment to number 7 to work authorization number 2 with AECOM for additional design services. And D is amendment number 1 to work authorization number 30 with Atkins North America, Inc. for oversight of design services during construction, main lanes widening, and frontage road ramps projects.
Okay, thank you, Ray Mateus again. So I put together a very brief PowerPoint. This one was a last minute addition, so I apologize, it was not part of your backup, but I figured this one is somewhat convoluted, so I better do a quick PowerPoint for you. To go back in time, these projects were actually came from a singular project that was originally developed many years ago called Americas Managed Lanes. That was intended to widen 375 over by Zaragoza Port of Entry up to the I-10 interchange with 375. And the point there was to extend the toll lanes, which ended there for Cesar Chavez. Later, TxDOT expanded that project by adding some funds to add frontage roads, braided ramps, and some other interchange improvements. TxDOT then later separated that larger project into 2 distinct projects, one which is referred to as Loop 375 Main Lane Widening, which was the original managed lanes project, and then a second one, which is the frontage road ramps project. And that's how we got to the 2 projects that we're doing here. This is the area that I mentioned before. This is the Zaragoza Port of Entry down in this area. This is Loop 375. This is where Chavez ended here. And then if you were to continue up the main lanes, the toll lanes would have continued all the way up to the 375 interchange. But this is the project location. This, and you can review this at your leisure. I'll make sure and provide this to you. The original main lanes project is in green, and then the frontage road ramps changes are in blue and red. And so that's when you look at the 2 distinct projects, these are them. The green is main lanes, the blue and red improvements are for frontage roads. So here's kind of an update on where we are. They were taken separately. The frontage road ramps is under construction. And so I'm going to skip through most of this actually, because I think that the next slide will handle all of this. So what we're really talking about doing here is that AECOM is the firm that has completed the design for the frontage road ramps project itself. You'll see what we're proposing today are 2 additional amendments to their design services, and these were at the request of and are being funded by TxDOT. So all of these amounts have been approved by TxDOT in advance. We're looking to include amendment number 6 for $271,000, which would provide AECOM services for design during construction. And that's important now because the design is essentially complete, and we're moving into construction. I should say TxDOT is moving into construction, and they've asked the designer of record, which in this case, for this particular project, the frontage road ramps, AECOM is a designer of record to be on call for issues as they arise during construction, which is very common practice. So that's design services during construction, which is amendment number 6. Amendment number 7 was really to clean up some design work that TxDOT had requested. It's another $248,000 for additional design services that are being provided by AECOM. So when you add the original design and the various amendments together, this total design agreement to AECOM is worth $4.4 million. So that's the frontage road ramps project. The other project, the main lanes widening project, was designed by Dannenbaum Engineering Company. And you'll see here what we're doing is adding amendment number 4 for $785,000. In this one, Dannenbaum will be providing design services during construction. So again, as I mentioned, we're moving into design. TxDOT has moved this project to to construction now, and they are looking for the designer of record for the main lanes widening project to provide design services during construction. Total project cost for this one on the design side for Dannenbaum is $5.6 million. So here are the requested board actions. I'll read them into the record for your convenience. Subject to your questions, I would be looking for a motion to approve board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments. Amendment to work authorization number 3 with Dannenbaum Engineering Company for design services during construction on State Loop 375 main lane widening project. Amendments to work authorization number 2 with AECOM for design services during construction and also for various additional design services on the State Loop 375 frontage road ramps project. And this one I hadn't mentioned, but I should have. Atkins North America, of course, our general engineering consultant, provides oversight services for us. They serve essentially as our engineering department, and we're looking to amend their work authorization number 30 to add these services for oversight of the construction design activities. The important part to note here, this is item D, 5D for Atkins is 5D under this agenda. There is no additional cost for this one. There's no increase in expenses. Atkins was able to include the additional services under the original compensation amount. However, we are amending the work authorization to allow for the inclusion of these additional services. So there's no change on this one. So amendment, or I should say item C here is amendment authorization number 30 with Atkins North America for oversight of design services during construction on both the main lanes and the frontage road project. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
Are there any questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please.
This is Pat Byrne, so moved.
I have a
Second.
motion.
Second,
And
Nick.
a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 6 is presentation, discussion, and action on board resolution adopting the CRRMA's updated investment policy, designing the CRRMA, designating the investment officer, and authorizing training for such investment officer.
Robert Studer, Director of Finance for the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. Yes, ma'am. We are required by the Texas Public Funds Investment Act to update our investment policy annually. As a refresher for the whole board, and I did take this item to the investment or to the Finance Committee for their review, and they did recommend approval to the full board. But just as quick backup, it's a resolution that's updating the policy, naming me as the investment officer and authorizing training that I'm required to take every 2 years. The city did revise its investment policy on August 31st. We typically take their policy, add a resolution on top of it and adopt that. And we've been doing that for many years. The changes they made were minimal, some cleanup, a couple new items within the Investment Act, and but there's really no impact on us. And so unless there are questions, I would recommend approval.
And you said the Finance Committee has reviewed this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Sis Louise, so moved. Mike Norwich, second.
So I have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Item 7 is presentation discussion on the following performance reports for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2020. Investment report, rideshare, and general engineering consultant teams' use of local resources.
Again, Robert Suter, Director of Finance for the record. Items 7A and 7B were taken to the Finance Committee and reviewed as well. There is no action. If you would like me to review those, I can. If you're wanting to move and focus on the action items, we can do that. What's your preference, Ms. Wilson?
Is there anyone who wants to go through these right now? I need to make sure we keep a quorum, and I know that item 10 is an action item. Okay, so I'm going to skip that and go to item 10, which is discussion and action on the operation of the Border West Highway. I believe this is the item we need to go into executive session for. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so there's a link that you sent us, right, for the executive session?
Yes, ma'am. I sent an email this morning, and if you'll use that one for the executive session item, we can join that meeting. However,
Okay.
could I get
So
a?
I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. This is Mike Norwich.
Pat Byrne, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is 11:29. We'll recess this meeting temporarily and go into the executive session link. I'll see you all there shortly.
Thank you. And just for the record, I'll note that we're going into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551071 for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel for deliberations regarding legal issues here on item 10. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this,
Hey, somebody gotta charge their phone.
this is Jim. I'm back.
Thank you, Jim. Robert, how are we doing on quorum?
I see. I don't see Mr. Byrne back. Mr. Norwich, are you on the call?
I'm on.
So I believe we do have quorum. We have Mr. Smith. Although he just dropped. We have Mr. Rosas, Mr. Norwich, and Miss Wilson, but I don't. Mr. Smith just dropped. So I think we're only at 3. There's Jim back, so we should be at quorum again.
Okay, so it is 12:06, and we are reconvening in open session. There was no action taken in executive session. If there's anything else we need to read into the record, would you please do so, Raymond? And then also retake roll call to ensure we have a quorum
Certainly. Joyce Wilson,
here.
Jim Smith,
Here.
Michael Norwich,
Here?
Luis Rosas, Luis,
I thought he
Patrick.
was here.
Yeah, so did I. Robert, can you check in with him? Patrick,
It looks like he's here through the screen, but he's not on the call. He hasn't called in. Let me reach out.
Patrick Byrne, Nicholas Lamantia, Marco Zaragoza. Okay, we'll need to wait for Mr. Rosas and then we'll have a quorum.
How's the weather in Florida, Joyce?
Yeah, it's really nice. Very nice. It's in the mid 80s. I mean, it's humid, but not overly humid. Had a couple little rainstorms here and there, but it's very nice.
It's been beautiful here.
Looks like it's still pretty warm though.
It's just been so comfortable. It's really nice.
Good.
I've got a cabin up in the Cloudcroft Mayhill area, and it's just been delightful up there. The nights are nice and crisp enough. I mean, and the days are just very pleasant. It's a nice time of year.
Good.
Okay, Mr. Rosas is joining right now.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi,
Luis?
are you back on?
Is that you,
Okay,
Luis?
so-
Sorry,
we
I
have
was
a
in
quorum?
I was in the other meeting and there was nothing happening. I apologize. I went into the executive session one because I didn't know if you all were back or not.
Oh, no
Okay.
problem.
Right, so we have a quorum.
Okay, so now we're going back to item number 10.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, item number 10 is discussion and possible action on the operation of the Border West Expressway. Do you
Yes,
need
ma'am.
to do anything?
Just the motion that we discussed. Shall I read that into the record?
Yes, please.
Excuse me. We're seeking a motion to authorize the submission of a request to the Texas Department of Transportation to consider operating the Border West Expressway as a non-toll facility and to negotiate the terms thereof, provided that any resulting agreements be brought back to the board for action.
This Jim, so moved.
Can I have a
Luis,
second?
second. Second.
So we have a motion and section. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. So, do we need to go back over the reports or, does anyone need to review the reports? Do we need to do the change orders?
So
Item
I think
9.
where we left off was we had finished item 7. So item 8, I'll just mention, is really just kind of tying a bow on the 2 projects that we had completed for the county. We shared that information with the planning committee, and those PowerPoints were provided to the board as backup. I'm happy to go through them if you're interested, but they're provided really mainly as informational items only.
Okay, so I will skip that. Do we need to do item 9?
Well, I'm required to provide them to the board. I don't know that I, excuse me, that I necessarily need to walk you through them. There are, I believe, just 2 change orders in this month's change order list. I can go through them very quickly if you'd like.
Sure.
This is Jim. They're pretty simple. I don't think there's a need unless somebody wants it.
Okay. And that would take us back to item 10, and that's the last of the items I had for you today.
All right. So if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and I want to thank everybody for being on board today.
This
Motion
Jim.
moved, Jim.
Yeah, a second.
Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Have a great afternoon and good weekend.
Okay, you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
See you soon.
10:13
Bye-bye.
to the
Bye,
record.
Raymond. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Raymond, I'm out of town